Breaking into the music business is a unique journey for everyone, but the love of music and the culture is the connecting tie.
These are the untold stories of how Canada's most prominent Black entertainment professionals got started in an industry that never sleeps.
I'm Adrian Wallace.
And I'm Tera Beljo. Welcome to Season 3 of Amplify.
They say that struggles forge your strengths, and in the entertainment industry, this couldn't be more true. Behind every film, song, stage performance, and written word, there's a diverse array of passionate individuals tirelessly pushing forward against all odds, overcoming adversity, forging connections with mentors, and discovering the vital spaces that foster growth and creativity. Whether it's juggling side gigs or diving into internships, every effort can pave the way to your ultimate path, like it did for award-winning director Weyni Mengesha.
Coming out of university, I worked on the kink before I graduated, and I have never done anything else. So through university, I worked at Blueberry Hill, being a waitress, and I worked at the parking lot at night doing my studies, and I worked at Aldo's shoe store. So I had a hustle for sure getting me through school, and I had a scholarship. But then I am very blessed to say that after I did the kink, the hustle was purely involved 100% in theater and music. And also non-for-profits. I worked on non-for-profits as a form of mentorship.
Director X's journey is a powerful reminder of how the combination of education and hands-on experience can set the stage for success.
I learned filmmaking on set. I learned filmmaking by doing it. And, going to school is good. They're going to teach you the theory. You're going to discuss the films. You're going to learn all the stuff you're going to learn all that stuff. It's great. And then you're going to have to go out and get experience. I started with experience and then had to go backwards into learning about film. So this is not a don't worry about school message. Make your decision on which way you want to do it. Either way, you got to learn it.
In the music industry, where rejection could be as common as rhythm, persistence isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity. But like DJ Jester can attest, sometimes the most powerful word you can hear is no, because it just might push you towards the yes that changes everything.
As a kid who wanted it bad, you kind of can't take, when you hear no, or you hear, no, we're not interested, or no, we don't think you're good enough. A lot of people would be like, okay, I gotta hang it up. Maybe I really am not good enough. I always felt like they didn't know what they were talking about. Like I would feel that way. Like, I know I'm good enough. I know I can do this. And I was passionate about it, that I was like, I'm not gonna take no for an answer. I'm not gonna take no for an answer. And, sometimes, you're overly aggressive and it gets into a little trouble, but not to the point of, at some point that those no's are going to turn to yeses. And I always tell people, then the no's started to come, I started to say the no's to people who came to me because I genuinely couldn't do what they wanted me to do because I was booked and busy or I was doing all these other things. So I always tell people, sometimes the most powerful thing you could say is no. Not in a negative way or a cocky way, but in a way where it pertains to business. Because you ultimately can't do it. You can't clone two or three of yourselves.
The second most powerful word is persistence. Why? Because Carla Beauvais, executive director of the Fondation Dynasty, has lived it and knows it can transform obstacles into stepping stones.
Many doors were closed on my face, but like I think I'm a fighter. I don't see any closed door as like the end, and I'm not gonna cry about like missed opportunities and stuff like that. It's always pushed me to do more. And I remember when I started at CBC, some people were telling me, "Oh, you won't be able to do this. They're not open to this kind of music." And I was like, "Watch me. I know I'm gonna make a difference." I always like it's. I think it's in me, but I don't. Yes, I had many closed doors, but at the end of the day, I think it opened other doors for me. Like I said, if I had became a sport journalist, I won't be here today. So you just take what life gives you and you try to make the best of it.
For Twysted Miyake-Mugler, one of Canada's most prominent figures in ballroom culture, rejection was the push he needed to discover his genuine passion and live his truth unapologetically.
Almost like distanced myself from my family for a couple of years, knowing that, like, you know, you drop these little hints. I mean, I didn't have to drop the hints, honey. I mean, like, if you know, you know, right? Doesn't take any parent kind of knows their child. If you're a sibling, you know your sibling, you know that sibling, right? So they knew, right? They also made it very clear that it wasn't like welcome, right? And that's what is fine. Like, I was built for tough, right? We coming from Finch, shout out to being from Finch and being born like used to like coming out of things or overcoming obstacles, being like resilient, right? So by the time I'm 20, and it's no shade, like I'm not trying to live a life that is, let's just say, acceptable at home anyways. If I can't bring boys around and can't do all these things at my house, then I don't want to be here, right? So I started to essentially go where I was allowed to be, right? And that is what I stuck to and that I held on to at that age. I mean, we were around each other 7 days a week, sleeping over as much as we can, like 10 of us at our house mother and father's house, right? They actually had a house together at that time, and all of us were there because we were all, like I said, all facing the same thing. All of us have parents that must have all gone to the same damn church, if it's because it's like they all of us had the same story, and people would be like, oh, it's so like, wow, I never heard that, but it's like we all have felt the same thing and all have experienced the same thing, so that we all go to the same place that we can just be, right? So that's who had my back, and those are the people that essentially kind of like affirmed me and made me like, you know, the people that kind of gas you up, yes bitch, you're doing it, you're eating it, and blah 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 blah. And once you have that few, you don't even care about all the people that are like against you. Even you don't even see them, if that makes sense too, right? Your world becomes a smaller world, and you live in that world. Although the world is huge, right? But the world is what you make up in your mind, right? And if you're not a part of my world, then it wasn't about you, right? And that's kind of that delusional reality. It's what made it fab for us, and that's kind of what an artist is, anyways. Delusional, right? Just a tad.
With a solid foundation, you can overcome almost any hurdle. Just ask media trailblazer Brandon Gonez, who had a strong support system that helped him disrupt the traditional media landscape.
Oh, there was a lot of adversity. Whew. Like, you know, it's like, why am I catching strays out here? It was a lot. But you know what? It really goes back to foundation. And spirituality. And, you know, my mom and my family, like, they did such a great job of, like, instilling in us a foundation of, like, humility, love, understanding, standing up for yourself, but also knowing where we come from. So there's a groundedness that I like to walk with, grounded in confidence, humility, all those things, because I know where I come from. I come from strong people, loving people, and they never forget, you know, they reminded us that all the time when we were younger. And again, like, you know, being raised in the church, like there's a bit of that still within me. I don't go to church every Sunday now, sorry, Ma. But I still try to carry myself with those teachings.
When you open up about what you love, you can create pathways to incredible opportunities and connections, like Weyni, whose passion for storytelling helped her inspire change and create a lasting impact.
Well, the thing that I think keeps me moving forward is just those moments where you get to share art, especially in theater where it's live. You get to experience the transformation in real time. I mean, you know, I remember when we first did The Kink, I still remember everybody stomping their feet at the end of that show and the whole room vibrating. And I don't know who started it and why that happened, but somehow it started to happen on every show. And I don't think it was one person coming back and starting it. It was just like, there was something to say back, yes. Thank you for showing me. I need to have a moment where I'm seeing myself, and I need to be beside other people who are seeing me. And I need to be around other folks from other cultures to see my lived experience as well, portrayed not by somebody who's sort of writing an approximation of me because they haven't lived the experience, but by people who have lived my experience. And that, I'll never forget that experience, that rumbling floor in that theater. And from I remember the theater manager talking to me about that experience as well. And to me, it was just an affirmation of the hunger and of the passion. And to me, kind of the spirit saying, keep going.
No one understands the profound impact of being seen and supported like Brandon, who creates a circle of like-minded, affirming people.
I am so blessed to have such talented people that I had in my circle. Talented individuals who were working in the industry, who also had this ambition to want to create something big, something new, something groundbreaking. And we came together and we talked, and they were also like, yeah, I like this idea. I like this idea. So, a lot of times, people look at me, BG, Brandon Gonez, and be like, he took that risk, but it's not just me. There's another Brandon on my team, Brandon Bentley, for example, who also took that risk. And from day one, and if people only knew what we were doing in the early days, but we both had this vision. We had a vision that we knew could come to fruition if we just stuck to it, right? And what we were creating was created out of love, was created with purity, and just like that, it's like everything just really started to fall into place. And then once the ball started to roll, you couldn't stop the ball.
But how do you find your tribe of mentors? Gail Case, Executive Director of the Black Academy, believes nurturing relationships can help you through.
So during that time, I was always the only Black woman in that space, and sometimes the only minority in that space. And this was like the late 90s and the early 2000s. So, just trying to find mentorship and someone that looks like you to kind of help you navigate those kind of issues was difficult. And you kind of lean on your faith, you lean on that hard, God will get you through it, but also on your friends. Like I ended up building some relationships with friends and being able to talk to my industry friends about the issues going on at work was also helpful.
Sometimes you find your mentors at home who thrive even after unimaginable tragedy. Take Brandon's mother, for instance, who tragically lost her husband when Brandon was just 5 years old, yet somehow summoned the strength to single-handedly raise her children and offer them the world.
You think back like 1990s, early 2000s, right? Like that was such a different time. And, she's a Black woman, right? Like 3 kids, you lose your support. And it's like, you have no other choice but to keep going. And throughout like all of our growing up years, she always put like me, my brother, my sister first. She was so selfless. And like I said, she never complained. Like at Christmas time, we always had gifts under the tree. We had clothes going to school. We had lunch money. I don't know how she made it work. We had a roof over our head, comfortable roof, Obviously you hear about bills, bills. But you hear that in every household. But, she pushed through, and in my story, like when I think about a superhero, I think about my mom. Yeah, my grandma. Yeah, she was like an amazing person. She was like one of my best friends. Like we used to talk, like I said, we used to watch Young and the Restless together. So my mom is like the youngest of 10 kids. And so what was really crazy is what happened to my mom also happened to my grandmother. She lost her first husband by stroke, and she was left with 3 kids and then 1 in her room. So what was always crazy is like my grandma would always look at my mom and be like, my baby's going through what I'm going through. So she always stayed with us whenever she would come from Jamaica. So we had so much time together. So she helped raise us while my mom was working and stuff like that.
In life, the bonds we forge can guide us through the toughest of times. For Twysted, it was the family he created that helped him find his way.
And then I remember going to a ball, like my first ball in New York. Watching a ball. And this is shout out to Seven, who was the first house mother. And Seven was the first mother of our house. And she was showing us a video. Mind you, like I said, we've been we're now exposed to the gay world. We're thinking that we're meeting people that understand us, whatever. But now to see, like, on this ball video, there's this category called realness, right? Is where you present to look straight, right? And I mean, like, he was trayed down, trayed. Dark skin, big, bushy beard. And this is like 2006, so the style back then was much baggier, right? But it wasn't a performativeness, right? You can feel the realness, hence the name of the category being called realness, right? So he walks along the whole runway. We see this guy presenting like a thug. We think it's like that kind of realness. And at the end of the runway, he like turns like this sachet, this thing, and then becomes this ultra feminine performer, starts to vogue at the end. And then that nuance of seeing like somebody who essentially has to like present as a boy all the time, be realness all the time, but essentially finds a place to let that out. I was like, this is me. Like, that is the first time I was like, I've seen something that I could fully relate to, because I've been forced to live this trade life and whatever because of being from Finch and whatever, and I'm not knocking it, thank God for it, because now in this age, like, I could use it as safety, as protection. It works out, right? But seeing somebody present like that but still have that let it out moment, and you can see that I was like, that is me, and I'm going to represent that. And that's kind of been my lane in ballroom, been my lane ever since as an artist and all that stuff. It's that whole realness with a twist. That was my inspiration. Hence my name Twysted and all that stuff, right? So
seeing yourself is essential, but what happens when you don't see reflections of you in the rooms or spaces that you aspire to be in? Weyni confronts this challenge head on, determined to carve out her own place in a world where she once felt unseen.
I think that battles happens every day because I'm constantly in new rooms. I was at one point an actor trying to find the right role, and then I was like, no, I need to be a director. And then when I was a director, I was like, well, there's a conversation of who's choosing what shows are being programmed, and now I'm a programmer, and I'm recognizing that there's also there's civic work to be done around how government funds arts and how philanthropy works in the city. And there's constantly a new room to pursue, to me. And in doing that, taking on this new job that I have now as artistic director, it's one of our largest theaters in the country. And, at our large, what we call A houses, there's 2 to maybe 3 people of color in the country, and definitely only 1 Black person. And I mean, it was acknowledged in the New York Times when I got this position that there was 4 in America and 1 in Canada. And that to me is kind of a sad article to have to exist. But to me, these are things that I put on my wall, both the good and the bad. I'll also put the things on my wall when I get emails saying why are you there? I put that on my wall as well.
And once you finally enter these coveted rooms, the real work begins. It's all about paying attention, honing your craft, and soaking in every lesson, just like Director X did when he discovered his mentor.
You got to study your craft. I did a video, I was Hype's intern, and then I did his storyboards, and I hung out with him a whole lot. And I was on set for a lot of things, and what will happen a lot, especially in directing, people begin to feel like, well, I stood right by the director the whole time, so I know what it takes to be a director. And then you direct and you realize, no, you don't. And part of the way you fix that is by studying, getting books, studying the craft. Now, especially in the age of YouTube, everything you want to learn, there's a video essay about, there's a book about, there's directors of photography talking about film and lenses, there's editors talking about editing, there's directors and actors, and there's tons of stuff. I personally have a playlist that has maybe over 600 different videos of all kinds of filmmakers talking about all different aspects of the game, because as a director, you need to know all different aspects of the game. But that's the big part. And then as you just drive it into your head and you just study, one day you're on set and you look at a light and say, scrim that. I said that. And I'm right, scrim that light. And that was my moment. That was what I said. I'm on a set and I'd studied all the books. I'm doing some tiny little video. And I looked at a light and said, scrim that light. And I had that moment. Oh, just came out. And I was right, scrim the light, that's too bright. So That is the power of this thing. Study your craft. Study your craft. If you're ever in a bad position, study your craft. If you're ever in a good position, then you need to remember to study your craft. This is a game of craft. Study it, study it, study it, study it. There will never be a bad time to study your craft.
We've seen firsthand how drive and determination can push us through the toughest challenges. We've learned that adversity isn't just an obstacle. It's an opportunity to innovate, grow, and redefine our limits. We've heard stories of resilience, of finding mentors in unexpected places, and creating spaces where we can learn and thrive. So, ask yourself, when faced with your next big challenge, will you let it break you, or will you use it as fuel to propel you forward? In the next episode of the Amplify docuseries, we dive into the tough conversations about learning lessons the hard way, navigating unconscious biases, and confronting the harsh realities of racism. Join us as we explore these critical topics and amplify the voices that need to be heard.